16-0. We beat every team by 3 scores and Super Bowl champions. Living in infamy in NFL history. Video done. Just kidding. Just kidding, Don Mafia. Now, you do know me as somebody who loves his Buffalo Bills, and I always look at the half-glass full approach. That's just who I am. In fact, the other day I was called a homer. Maybe that's me. I don't know. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen? You read the title correctly. What I wanted to do was go through our 2020 opponents and then sort of give a way too early prediction of what the Buffalo Bills are going to finish out in 2020. What is their record going to be? Now, let's be honest with ourselves. Expectations for the Buffalo Bills are sky high. This past season, we went 10-6 and made it to the playoffs and suffered a heartbreaking loss in the wild card round. So Bills fans alike and the sporting world in general wants to see the Bills take that next step. And might I say, we have quite the test ahead of us because we have a pretty scary-ass schedule coming up in 2020, ladies and gentlemen. But I have faith in our front office that we will make the appropriate moves for us to take that next step up, go back to the playoffs, and hell, maybe even win the AFC. So yeah, like I said, guys, what I want to do is sort of go by each opponent and predict whether or not that we are going to win or lose and then come up with a final record of 2020. Now, like I said, this is way too damn early. I know there's, several moves that the Buffalo Bills are probably going to make that's impossible for us to predict, that will probably change the trajectory of what I believe our schedule is going to be, and the same thing for our opponents. For all we know, some of our opponents could get worse, and some of our opponents could get way better. So, like I said, this is way too early, but for shits and giggles, here we go. Before we start that, I do have a couple of announcements. Number one, I am starting a second YouTube channel. I put it on my community tab. It's called Dan Mitchell IRL, which means in real life. Basically, on that channel, I'm just going to be doing a bunch of vlogs, a bunch of stupid, funny videos. So if you guys want to get a better idea of who I am as a person, then I would highly recommend subscribing to that channel. I'll be putting out bangers. I promise you about that. Number two, I am also starting a sports podcast. It's called The Don Mafia Show. My co-host is going to be my buddy. We are actually recording the first episode on Saturday. I'm looking to drop it on Monday or Tuesday. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at @RealDanMitchell because I will announce where you can listen to that said podcast. So stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's dive into some of these opponents. And so first opponent that stands out is the Kansas City Chiefs. 12-4, and as we all know, they are currently reigning Super Bowl champions. Now, as long as it's not the Patriots, I can accept it. I really, really can. But guys, this is definitely going to be a pretty scary matchup. And yes, they did win the Super Bowl. I'm not taking that away from them. But do you want to know what was pathetic? That damn Super Bowl parade. And in fact, a Twitter user posted this the other day, claiming that the T-Pain concert on Canal Side a couple of years ago blew that Chiefs Super Bowl parade out of the water. And I wholeheartedly agree. Say that the Buffalo Bills were to win that Super Bowl, then it would take the city of Buffalo an entire calendar year just to clean the broken fold-up tables and crush blue light cans that would litter the street. There would be a record-breaking amount of newborns at Mercy Hospital 9 months after the parade. Buffalo does it right. And that's the one thing that Kansas City needs to learn. And so, but back to business. We all know that the Kansas City Chiefs, they are reigning Super Bowl champions. They are a very, very good-ass team. Now, they do have very little cap space going into 2020, but luckily the majority of their stars are already under contract, and they're most likely going to be seeing the majority of their team back, minus 1 or 2 defensive pieces. Now, the Chiefs really don't have a stout defense. They did happen to turn it on second half in the season and then into the playoffs where it mattered most. But largely the Chiefs are driven by that high-powered ass offense. Now, while I think that the Bills defense can give them a run for their money, I'm going to have to say that we are going to lose that game at home. And so next opponent is the Los Angeles Chargers. Last year in 2019, they went 5-11. News just recently broke that Phillip Rivers, his wife, and his 32 kids shipped off and moved to Florida. Not days later, the Chargers announced that they were severing ties with America's favorite redneck. So now the quarterback situation is up in the air in Los Angeles. Could it be Tyrod Taylor? And for all you Tyrod fans out there, this could be your opportunity to see what he does with the team. But more likely than not, I have a feeling that they're going to end up drafting Justin Herbert out of Oregon. Maybe they let him sit behind Tyrod for a year, or maybe they throw him into the Wolves at some point. But I mean, the Chargers, while they do have a decent amount of cap space, they have a lot of unrestricted free agents, particularly Melvin Gordon. They have Austin Eckler is up there, Hunter Henry. While I think that they will improve from next year, I still think that they are in their rebuilding process. With that being said, since they will be playing the Buffalo Bills at New Era, the Buffalo Bills are going to come out on top in that game. Next is going to be the Los Angeles Rams, yet another home game from the NFC West. And so, funny story, the Rams are a perfect example of how not to run a business. In fact, when I look at the Los Angeles Rams front office, I think of Tom and John Ralphio's attempt of bringing Entertainment 720 off of the ground in Parks and Recreation. I mean, realistically, that team sold their soul for Jason Ramsey and completely rid their chances of having a first-round pick in this damn decade, it seems like. I think that Sean McVay and the front office in the LA Rams, they were too hung up on making the team better now, and they made a bunch of very terrible financial decisions. And I think that this is going to be the year where it absolutely bites them in the ass. I think that there's going to be a major decline with that. And then on top of that, Jared Goff has proved to be rather inconsistent. This past year, he threw 16 interceptions. Now, it's no 30 interceptions like Jameis Winston, but when you make a quarterback throw at least 60 passes per game, it's bound to happen. I don't see Sean McVay changing that, especially if he stays with Goff. With that being said, with the fact that they are basically in cap hell right now, I just don't see the Rams beating us. So I'm going to have to go with a W against the Rams. And so next up, we have the Seattle Seahawks. They ended up finishing the 2019 season 11-5. Very talented team. I think that if they didn't have Chris Carson go down with that injury, then I think that they probably would have made a deeper run this year in the playoffs. In fact, the Seattle Seahawks, they are actually my number one pick for the NFC team that will represent the Super Bowl next year. I just think that they're a couple of pieces away from absolutely dominating. One thing in particular, they do have Clowney, who is most likely going to hit free agency and not return as a Seahawk. I don't see that being a huge issue for them. Regardless, they're a fantastic team. They're stout offensively. They're pretty damn good at defense. Unfortunately, this is going to be the Bills' second loss of 2020. And so next we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last year in 2019, they finished 8-8. And as Bills fans, we can tip the cap to them for allowing us to embarrass them on national television and allow us to clinch the playoffs on their home field. Now, next year might be a little bit more of a challenge. We have Ben Roethlisberger most likely coming back. But let's be honest with ourselves, folks. The Pittsburgh Steelers are in the second worst cap situation in the entire NFL. They're $2 million over the cap. So with that being said, be on the lookout for the Pittsburgh Steelers to essentially have a fire sale of some of their most talented players, just so they can, muster up some type of capital so they can at least go 9-7 or 8-8. Now, you look at some of their offensive weapons like Juju, fantastic receiver. He's the man. James Conner, I think he's overrated. I think he was a one-hit wonder. Washington, I think, was another receiver. I don't foresee the Pittsburgh Steelers bringing in enough talent to make them significantly better than what they were this past year, because that's just not how money works. So I see this being a win. This is at home, and this is going to be yet another win for the Buffalo Bills. And so next up, we have the Miami Dolphins. We all know the Dolphins. 5-11 in 2019. They did give us a run for our money in our first matchup in 2019. In fact, I can recall several Bills fans being pissed off that Miami even ended up putting up a fight. They are still in the rebuild process. I don't think that it's going to last as long as people are thinking it is going to, as long as the front office makes some moves. Because the Dolphins have 3 first-round picks this year in the 2020 draft. So, I mean, they can address a lot of issues. They're most likely going to pick up Tua, who is hopefully going to be, for them at least, the quarterback of the future. And they're probably going to be able to fill in a lot of desperate holes with young-ass talent. While I think that they will take a step up, I don't see the rebuild being finished, and I don't see them beating the Bills. That's going to have to be another 2 wins for our boys up in New Era. And so now we get to our AFC East nemesis, the New England Patriots. Now, last year we all know that they finished 12-4. Their offense was less than exciting, and they rode their defenses back throughout the playoffs and losing in that first game against the Tennessee Titans. Thank you, Tennessee. I enjoyed watching every second of that game. The Patriots organization has a lot of questions. Number one, is Tom Brady coming back? So I'm not saying that my prediction of what's going to happen in these games rests on whether or not that Tom Brady will be back or will not be back. I think that Tom has demonstrated that he is slowly on his decline. He's just not the same player. Even if he is, some Patriots fans will try to say, oh, he just didn't have enough weapons. Now, let's say that is true, right? The Patriots are going to have to sacrifice some of their stout defense financially in order to bring the appropriate weapons for their quarterback to succeed. And that's something that I'm sure that Bill Belichick is thinking. So whether or not that it's Tom Brady, whether or not that it's Teddy Bridgewater, I mean, you can't take away the fact that the Patriots are a very well-coached organization. With that being said, since they are our rivals, it is in division. I see us splitting with the Pats. I see us beating them at home, and then I see them beating us at Gillette. And so right now we get to the New Jersey Jets. 7-9 in 2019. We really don't know what the full potential of that team could have been, especially since Sam Darnold had mono for about 5 or 6 weeks. So who really knows how good the Jets truly were? But you can look at a couple of different things. The Jets historically have completely ignored their offensive line. In fact, out of all the mock drafts that I have been reading, they have still yet to address their offensive line in the first round. They are going for another receiver. It also doesn't help that half the team hates Adam Gase. And I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, this guy's a pretty big douchebag. So it's well known that him and Le'Veon Bell are not getting along. I wouldn't be surprised if Le'Veon packs up and goes somewhere else in 2020. Robbie Anderson is most likely going to go elsewhere. I think that the Jets are going to take a step back from 7-9, believe it or not. I think the Jets are going to be worse. Might I even say that the Dolphins will have a better record than the Jets next year? Just saying. But with that being said, I see the Bills taking both of those wins, one in New Jersey and one in New Era. And so now we get to the Cardinals. This is our first away opponent. Like I said, they're a young team. They're exciting. Minus 57-year-old Larry Fitzgerald, who is coming back. All jokes aside, respect that guy. I'm glad he's coming back. Right now, like, this offense is completely ran by Kyler Murray. You have a running back in Kenyon Drake, who is still up in the air of whether or not that he's going to be at the Cardinals, say that they can afford to keep him there. It sure seems that way, too, because the Cardinals released David Johnson. So this organization, like I said, they have about $51 million in cap space in 2020. So I could imagine that they are going to go out there and try and fill as many holes as they possibly can. But I don't see them being at a point rate of their rebuild to be competitive with the Buffalo Bills defense. Yeah, I'm going to have to go with another W for the Buffalo Bills. And so next we have the Denver Broncos. They finished 7-9 in 2019. Like a few of our opponents, they are still, pretty much in the middle of their rebuild. They have a very promising quarterback in Drew Lock, who, when he finally did start, showed a glimmer of hope for that football team. But like I said, it's looking like that they're going to let their number one cornerback run away. And so they are top 10 in cap. It is going to be in Denver, but I'm going to have to say that we win this game. And so next up is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders. That's pretty weird to say. And so the Raiders won 7-9 last year, and I believe this is going to be John Gruden's third year at the helm of the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, there's a lot of questions. Is Derek Carr going to be the quarterback, or is Gruden going to be looking somewhere else? Now, with Gruden's third year, I have a feeling that this is going to be the year that he does figure it out. I really think that the Raiders are going to take that next step up. I really, really do. Just because of the process that they were able to put in motion, I am going to say that the Buffalo Bills are going to win that game, just because I'm really not seeing a lot of offensive weapons that can challenge the Buffalo Bills secondary. And I'm going to have to say that the Bills win this one for sure. By the way, out of any game that I am going to next year in 2020, it's going to be in Vegas. You better book that. Well, next it goes to the San Francisco 49ers. We all know that Kyle Shanahan is famous for choking in big game situations. And that 28-point to 3-point deficit in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, blew it. The 10-point lead in the Super Bowl just last week, blew it. But we all know that the 49ers are built very, very similarly to the Bills. They have an amazing-ass defense. And Jimmy G actually did okay. I know that a bunch of people, which blew my mind too, because people were like, oh my God, should the 49ers replace Jimmy Garoppolo after he led them to the Super Bowl? They're talented. They're very talented. I foresee them having a very similar year next year. And so I do see the Seahawks winning that division next year, and so I still see the 49ers being competitive. That defense is just so damn good. It is in San Francisco, so I'm going to have to say that this is also going to be a loss for the Buffalo Bills. And so last but not least, we have the Tennessee Titans. Now, we did end up taking home the W in 2019, mostly because their kicker was absolute garbage and missed like 30 field goals. And then number two, they didn't have Ryan Tannehill at the helm. So next year when we go back to Nashville, believe it or not, I think that we are going to win this game. Number one, because the Titans have, I believe it's about $43 million in cap space. But look at this. The two players that made their team amazing, absolutely amazing, was Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill. And unfortunately, right according to Spot Track, Tannehill is worth an estimated $30 million a year, and Derrick Henry is worth an estimated 13.3, basically eating up 90 to 93% of their overall cap space. So say that the Titans want to spend 95% of their potential cap, then I'm not sure. So with that being said, I think the Titans are going to have to make a very hard decision. Which player do they want to keep, Derrick Henry or Ryan Tannehill, just for the sake of finances itself? And say that both of them are not at the helm, I also see the Bills winning this one. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that gives the Buffalo Bills a final record of 12-4. That's right, baby. That's right. Your way too early schedule prediction coming from your boy, Dan Mitchell. Now, like I said, guys, I did put this before the video that there's a lot of things that could happen. There's, several players that the Bills could get, re-sign, cut, that could completely change my prediction. Maybe it's better, maybe it's worse. And then same thing with our opponents. They could get significantly better, or maybe they don't, and they just surprise the world and have like a really easy schedule. Who knows what's going on? This is a way too early prediction, but this is what I'm thinking so far. And maybe it's even a meter right into my mind of my expectations of what I want the Bills to sort of accomplish next year, basically. Besides that, guys, thank you for tuning in to yet another edition of the Don Mafia Report. Say that you're new here. My name is Dan Mitchell. and I put out NFL and Buffalo Bills videos on a consistent basis. So if that's your cup of tea, smash that subscribe button, like this video for the YouTube algorithm, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in, and above all else, let's go Buffalo.